Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Commander Tribe Elder. Today I'm going to go over one of the decks that I made from the Doctor Who series, or the Doctor Who drop, whatever you want to call it. I do have to admit I was a little disappointed in the way they did the decks, but I think it turned out okay. I would have liked to have seen two Doctor decks and two enemy decks, because that's kind of what it felt like when you were playing Masters of Evil. Like, it was just that was the name of the precon, was Masters of Evil. It just felt kind of disjointed, like it was trying to do too many things. You had one deck that was doing, or you had basically with the Daleks, you want to do damage and get more Daleks on the table that way. You want to have them facing these villainous choices. And then with the Cybermen, you're either wanting to mill or some other way of getting your opponent's creatures onto your side of the battlefield from the graveyard onto your side as 2/2 artifact creatures. So one was doing this token thing, this other one was stealing from your opponent, and so I just kind of separated it out and gutted all the alien stuff. And I have a Cyberman deck and a Dalek deck. And I kind of wish they did it that way. Like, they could have just made that the way to go in the first place. Kept the colors the same. Maybe that's why they didn't do it, because they felt that the color, having two decks of the same exact three colors, was too much. I don't know. I would have preferred it, honestly. And then that way they could have centered in on some of it. And then with the alien theme, they could have put that in as a sub theme that could have literally been weeded out and then had its own concisive deck made out of it. Sort of like what I already did, except I had to do that with probably two of the greatest enemies of Doctor Who, and that's the Daleks and the Cybermen. For the Cybermen deck, I did choose Ashod, the Lone Cyberman, as the commander. He's one, a blue, black, and a red for a 3/3 legendary artifact creature Cyberman. The first non-legendary artifact spell you cast each turn has causality 2, which just means as you cast it, you may sacrifice a creature with power 2 or greater. When you do copy it, a copy of an artifact spell becomes a token. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, put a 1/1 counter on Ashod, the Lone Cyberman. So we are going to be producing some tokens. That's more of an after effect, for me at least. I'm concentrating with this one more with the building of Cybermen and trying to accomplish some sort of tribal boost with it. It didn't work out that great as far as being a dedicated Cyberman tribal deck, because there's only a handful of cards out, and that's one other reason that I kind of wish they made it into two decks. That way we could have just had that bigger boost in the number of Cybermen cards there actually are. Before I go any further, I do have to say sorry for my voice. It's a little crackly. I've been getting over being sick now for over a week. Yeah, so apologies on that. Anyway, one of the big problems with the deck, just as trying to adjust as a precon, was there was just a ton of non-basic lands in it. And usually that's not a problem, but when you have a card that says, hey, play this card untapped if you have, so many non-basic lands out. Well, that's hard to accomplish if you have, I think it was 3, maybe 4 of each. It might have even been less than that, of each non-basic land. So that was one of the first things I did do with this to kind of keep the land base more or less intact, was to increase the number of non-basic lands, and I felt it kind of gave it a little bit more consistency as well. So I did put in 6 basic mountains, 6 basic swamps, and 7 basic islands. So we have a lot more density of basic lands. I think it works out pretty well. So it's 19 total basic lands, and then we do have 18 non-basic lands, and we'll go ahead and go through those now. The first one is Choked Estuary. Enters the battlefield. As it enters the battlefield, you may reveal an island or swamp card from your hand. If you don't enter the battlefield tapped, it adds either a blue or a black. Exotic Orchard. I love these in my 3+ color decks. It's just tap, add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls can produce. You're more than likely to get at least 2, if not all 3. Next is Haunted Ridge. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands, and it produces either a red or a black. Darkwater Catacombs. It's a non-basic land. Pay 1, tap it, add a blue and a black. I like this one too. I didn't notice this at first, but there's little skeleton dudes in those little cubicles. I have no idea what episode that's from, but it is one of the Doctor Who cards. Anywho, Stormcarved Coast. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. It produces either a blue or a red. Dragon Skull Summit. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp or a mountain, and it produces either a red or a blue. Frostbow Snarl. As it enters the battlefield, you reveal an island or a mountain card from your hand. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. It produces either a blue or a red. Sunken Hollow. It is an island in a swamp, which is awesome. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Keep hearing weird sounds through my thing. I think my cat's snoring. Anyway, Drowned Catacomb. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island or a swamp. It produces either blue or black. Command Tower. It just adds 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Shipwreck Marsh. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. It produces either a blue or black. Terramorphic Expanse. You tap it, sacrifice or search your library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. You know, that's also one of those that if you only got so many out, you could run them the entire game, and then that land becomes nothing. So that's another reason to kind of boost up the basic land count. Foreboding Ruins. As it enters the battlefield, you may reveal a swamp or a mountain card from your hand. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped, produces either a black or a red. Smoldering Marsh. It is a swamp and a mountain. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. And produces a red or a blue, or black or a red. Fiery Islet, however you pronounce it. Tap it, pay 1 life, add either a blue or a red. You may sacrifice it and pay 1 and tap it and draw a card. I like the way this is done much more. Usually these abilities cost way more than this. You know, just like, well, it's on a land, you could do it whenever you want to, so we gotta charge like 7 and a blue for it. It's like, no, you really don't. You really, really, really don't. Anyway, next is Shadow Blood Ridge. You pay 1, tap it, add either a black, or no, you add a black and a red to your mana pool. Reliquary Tower. You know, there's no really reason for this being in here, but it's pretty, and then in case we do get more cards in our hand, which isn't super likely, you know, it's a Doctor Who card, leave me alone. I borrowed the mana base basically strictly for one of the decks. It's just a colorless mana. River of Tears. This was a weird one. I kind of like the design of this. This is kind of neat. It will eventually not trigger, but I kind of wish we had more lands like this. I've only seen the blue-black one. You tap it for blue. If you played a land this turn, instead add a black. It's like that's kind of a neat way of doing it. Anyway, so our total land count is 37. And next, we will go over the ramp, which they printed a lot of really cool ramp spells that we haven't seen, at least for a little while. Namely among them is Wayfarer's Bauble. It's 1 for an artifact. You pay 2, sacrifice it. Pay 2, tap, sacrifice it. Search your library for a basic land card. Put that card into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Love that card. Thought Vessel, again, this was just part of the primary deck. I took the Cybermen aspect, kept the land base, kept as many cards as I could, and then did the other stuff with the Dalek. So there are a little bit more wonkier cards in it, like the Thought Vessel. Again, no real reason for having a huge hand in this one, so feel free to take this out and put something else in this place. In any case, you pay 2 for an artifact. You have no maximum hand size. Tap it, add a cutlass to your mana pool. Foundry Inspector, I love these kind of ramp spells because it's not really a ramp, but it's so much better than ramp just because it takes effect after each spell. So it's 3 for a 3/2 artifact creature construct. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. There is a ton of artifacts in this deck, so that was a really good one to have. Is it Signet? It's 2 for an artifact. You pay 1, tap, add a blue and a red to your mana pool. This is the Ratghost Signet. It's 2 for an artifact. Pay 1, add a black and a red to your mana pool. The whole line of Signets. Arcane Signet, 2 for an artifact. Tap, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. And then the 2 Talismans. Talisman of Dominance, 2 for an artifact. You could pay, or you could tap it for either colors, or you could tap it, take 1 damage, and produce either a blue or a black. Next is Talisman of Indulgence. It's 2 for an artifact. Again, just either tap for colorless, or tap, add black or red, and it deals 1 damage to you. Of course, Soul Ring. It's 1 for an artifact. You tap it for 2 colorless. I like the art on that one. Not entirely sure what exactly that is, but it's pretty. This is a little bit more weirder one from the Warhammer 40k, or whatever they call it. I guess it's Warhammer 40,000. I don't know how they exactly want you to say it. It's Illuminator Caesaris, I believe. It's 2 and a black for legendary artifact creature Necron. It's a 3/3. It has Secret of the Souls, which is just tap, sacrifice another creature at an amount of black equal to the sacrificed creature's mana value. And then we also have Ethereum Sculptor. It's 1 and a blue for a artifact creature, Vidalcan Artificer. It's a 1/2. Artifact spells you play cost 1 less to play. And last is Mind Stone. Had to put it in here because the Cyberman had on it. More, just keep it in. It's 2 for an artifact. Tap it for a colorless. Pay 1, tap it, sacrifice it, draw a card. So yes, that was 12 pieces of ramp there. I don't have a ton of card draw in here. We do have 6 of them, though. The first is Great Intelligence's Plan. It's for a blue and a black for sorcery. You draw 3 cards, then target opponent faces a villainous choice. They discard 3 cards, or you may cast a spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. God, that's a rough choice. Like, do they get 1 free thing, or do you get rid of 3 things that you could cast? Oof. Free casts are always a pain in the butt. Mystic Forge is probably one of the best ones in here. It's 4 for an artifact. It's not directly draw, but it's almost better than draw. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast artifact spells and color spells from the top of your library. You may tap it, pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library. Probably the big downside to this one is, unlike the, I think it's called Future Sight, you don't get to play lands. You couldn't even play artifact lands because it says cast. You may cast. So you could not play an artifact land. You would have to draw it or get it out of the way. So just something to note about that. Next is the Chronomancer. It's 1 and a black for a artifact creature Necron Wizard. It's a 1/1. It has flying. It also has atomic transmutation. Pay 1, sacrifice another artifact, draw a card. You may unearth this for 2 and a black, which is just return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step, or if it would leave the battlefield, unearth only as a sorcery. Next is Idol of Oblivion. With our commander out, this will actually trigger as long as we're killing off 2/2s. It's 2 for an artifact. You tap it, draw a card, activate this ability only if you created a token this turn. Or you may pay 8, tap it, sacrifice Idol of Oblivion, create a 10/10 color cell, draw 2 creature token. Usually we're not making the big token. Usually. I guess you could if you want to. Next is Endless Atlas. It's 2 for an artifact. Pay 2 and tap, draw a card. Activate this only if you control 3 or more lands with the same name. Again, another reason why up that count of basic lands, because we can't have multiple names of non-basic lands in the deck. Yes, I shoehorned a piece of card draw. Next one is Notion Thief. It's 2, a black and a blue for a human rogue. It's a 3/1. It has flash, which means you can cast it instant speed. If an opponent would draw a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead that player skips that draw and you draw a card. Nice to do when somebody's drawn 3 or 4 cards. So next we have some removal. There are 10 forms of removal in this deck. The first is Negate. It's 1 and a blue. Counter target non-creature spell. Next is its cousin, Counterspell. It's 2 blue, counter target spell. I kind of want to keep this one in the deck. I know it was from not Cybermen stuff, but I thought it was interesting, and I think it's a little too limited to call it a board wipe, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. It's called Flatline. It is from the Doctor Who set, and you pay 2 and a blue. It's an instant. Creatures your opponent control have base power and toughness 0/1 until the end of the turn. Note, it does not say they lose abilities, so if that Blightsteel Colossus is out there and you're trying to kill it, it still has indestructible. But other than that, you're going to get rid of pretty much anything else you decide to block or anything that gets attacked against you. You could use this as a really cool combat trick. Next is the Cyber Conversion. I think this is going to be one of those cards that gets really up there in price. We'll see. It's 2 blue, turn target creature face down. It's 2/2 Cyberman artifact creature. This is a good way to get rid of that Blightsteel Colossus, because now it doesn't have any abilities. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that's going to be a really good one for getting rid of some stuff. And I might have mismathed on this one as far as the removal, because I have a number of board wipes over here and they were mixed in. Anyway, next is Defile. It's a single black mana for an instant. Target creature gets -1/-1 until the end of the turn for each swamp that you control. Next is it's called Delete. I thought this wasn't. I mean, you could kind of classify this as a board wipe. I don't know. It's one of those weird ones. It could go either way. Just depends on how you use it, how much mana you have at the time. You could surely boost this up to 10, and then it feels like a board wipe. But if you're only doing it for 3 or 4, that's not really a board wipe. But it does X. You pay X and red. It's a sorcery. Delete deals X damage to each non-artifact creature and each player. So it definitely is one-sided. It won't hit your stuff most of the time. And it could feel board wipe-ish, but not really. It just depends on how you use it, what you want to do in that turn. This was kind of a weird one, just because it could be removal. Some of these are really getting out in that realm of like, really, what does this card classify as? But anyway, it's Midnight Crusader Shuttle. It's 4 for an artifact vehicle. That is a 3/4. One of the big reasons it's in this deck is because it is crew 2. And it has Midnight Entity. Whenever a Midnight Crusader Shuttle attacks, defending player faces a villainous choice. That player sacrifices a creature, or you gain control of a creature of your choice that player controls until the end of the turn. If you gain control of a creature this way, tap it, and it's attacking that player. With me, if they let me get their creature, I would sacrifice it to one of my sack outlets. Hopefully they're paying attention to the board and they just pick off one of their little ones and kind of save their board. But that could only last so long in most decks. So I thought it was an interesting one. It was from the Doctor Who set. I figured keep it in there. Especially since it's really easy to crew by my Cybermen. And the next is Chaos Warp Classic. It's 2 and a red for an instant. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, put it into the battlefield. Alright. Next is the board wipes. It looks like I have 5 in here. You might think that's a lot, but only one of them will hit my creatures. Well, 2 of them. One of them's kind of iffy. That one would be the Nightmare Unmaking. It's 3 black for sorcery. Choose one exile creature cards with power greater than the number of cards in your hand, or exile creatures with power less than the number of cards in your hand. I think with this one, I would choose greater than the number of cards in my hand most of the time, because like a lot of mine are going to be low to the ground, even though they do get the +1/+1 from the no, they don't get the +1 from. That's right, he does that himself, to himself. So I don't know. It could vary on how you use this one. If you have a lot of Cybermen out and your commander isn't that big, choose the above. Just however you want to do it. You always want to make that one work out best for you. So this is the one that will hit my own cards, and that's Blasphemous Act. It's 8 and a red. The spell costs 1 last to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and it does 13 damage to each creature. So this will hit us, but the other 3 do not. So the first one is Either Eyes. It's one of my favorites. Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand for 3 and a blue, and it is an instant. Love this when somebody just tries to do an alpha strike, whether against me or the entire board. You just go, nope, basically I just Cyclonic Rift you for half the price. Next is Their Name is Death. This is 3 black for a sorcery. Destroy all non-artifact creatures. This will keep 90% of our board plus intact because most of our creatures will be artifacts. And next, I don't really like the card too much, but I like board wipes that don't hit me. So in Garruk's Wake, it's 7 black for sorcery. Destroy all creatures you don't control and all planeswalkers you don't control. I think the big one on this one is that I want a little bit of planeswalker hate, just in case. So there we go. All right, I named this next section, Wait, They Have What? And this is basically all the Cybermen from the Doctor Who deck. Plus it also is it gives just artifact creatures a boost in some way or another, or it gets +1/+1 counters. We will see as we go through the cards. So the first one is the Cybermen Patrol. It's 2 for an artifact creature that is a Cyberman. Artifact creatures you control have Afflict 3, and it is a 2/2. I believe Afflict is if it gets blocked, it deals that much damage to the opponent anyway. So if I'm attacking with a bunch of 2/2s and you block them all, you're still taking 3 from each of them. So it's kind of one of those weird choice things again. It's not considered a villainous choice, though. Next is the Cybermen Squadron. Foily. It's a 7-drop. It's 7 generic mana for an artifact creature Cyberman. It's a 5/5. Non-legendary artifact creatures you control have Myriad. This really goes in well with the afflict, I think, because it's like, well, do we block all these things? Now there's a ton of them. So some of them are going to get through even if they get blocked. Even if they get chump blocked by like a ton of goblins or something. Non-legendary artifact creatures you control have myriad. Whenever a creature with myriad attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature's. You may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. Exile each token at the end of combat. So basically, send your army. I'm going to attack this one player, and now I'm attacking all three players. And actually, it is at the end of combat that they get exiled. But if I remember right, you can, like after damage is done, then sack them to some of your abilities and get whatever. Just remember, mana does not carry over from steps unless you have something that says otherwise. But you can do damage, like if you have a Goblin Bombardment, okay, they deal their damage. Now, before the end of combat step, like with, what was the name of the card? Reconnaissance. You pay 0 and untap it. Same thing here. You could just take those tokens and beat the crap out of your opponents with them. Next is the Scorpeth Lord. It's 2 and a black. Artifact creature, Necron Noble. It's a 3/2 with menace, which means it has to be blocked by 2 or more creatures. It has command protocols. Artifact creatures you control get +1/+0 and have menace. You can also unearth this for 2 and a black as well. So again, just making those blocking decisions harder with the menace and the attack boost. This one just puts tokens on. It's Goliath Truck for 4. You get an artifact vehicle that's a 4/4. It has Stowage. Whenever Goliath Truck attacks, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another attacking creature, and it has Crew 2. That was one of the big reasons I put in here was that Crew 2 ability. This is a fun one. I used a lot of cards from the Warhammer set into this deck. It's Thunderhawk Gunship. It's 6 for a 6/6 artifact vehicle. It has flying. When it enters the battlefield, create 2/2/2 Astartes warrior creature tokens with vigilance. But the big thing is whenever Thunderhawk Gunship attacks, attacking creatures you control gain flying until the end of the turn. And again, that key to crew. And I think this is probably one of my favorite vehicles. Just because it is cheap to crew, it gives you tokens to crew it with, and it gives your entire army, all your creatures flying that are attacking, so it makes them harder to attack. How many people have 4/4 flying, twice the number of creatures that you control out? I mean, that's essentially what could happen is that, you're attacking with a bunch of 2/2s. They have menace, they have flying, they've got +1/+0, just all these things stacked up against each other. Next is Cryptothrall. It's 4 for an artifact creature construct. It is a 3/3. Other artifact creatures you control have hexproof. So this kind of saves your army against some of that targeted removal. This was just a nice little boost for them. It's Master of Ethereum. It's 2 for and a blue for a star artifact creature Vidalcan wizard. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts you control, and then artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. So as many of these are making it life difficult for your opponent to block. This is a fun one. It's Cyberdrive Awakener. It's 5 and a blue for a 4/4 flyer artifact creature construct. Other artifact creatures you control have flying. When it enters the battlefield, until the end of the turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4. So this will actually, you could attack with some of your old, like ramp spells and stuff like that, like your Soul Ring and that kind of thing. And for a pretty decent amount. 4/4 flyer? That's a Sierra Angel without vigilance. All right, the next section I named it Not So Alone. This brings in some of your artifact creature and artifact creature tokens in a larger amount. So the first one I have to definitely say is the Cyber Ship. It's 6 for an artifact vehicle that is an 8/8 flyer. It has crew 4, which isn't too bad. That's just 2 Cybermen. Whenever Cyber Ship deals combat damage to a player, put 2 cards of that player's library into the battlefield face down under your control. They are 2/2 Cybermen artifact creatures. Note, these are not tokens. Note, these are not having the abilities of the creatures that you stole. Note, they don't even have to be creatures. It is just the top 2 cards off your opponent's library. You take the top 2 off. I don't care if it's a instant. It goes face down, and it is a 2/2 artifact creature that is a Cyberman. So kind of an interesting way, especially if somebody does, like, I believe it's Vampire Tutor puts it on top of your library. Whatever tutor puts things on top of your library, it's a good way to disrupt that. This was a fun one, and I actually went and made an entire deck around this guy. This is the Cyber Controller. It's X, blue, blue, black for a legendary artifact creature Cyberman. He is a 3/3. When the Cyber Controller enters the battlefield, each opponent mills X cards. Put all creature cards milled this way into the battlefield face down. Under your control, they are 2/2 Cybermen artifact creatures, and then other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Yes, I could have put this in the last category, but it brought up more friends, so I was like, whatever. Just pick a side. But yeah, I absolutely love this thing so much. I actually got the one with the wavy little foil effect on it, so I made an entire deck out of this guy. Hopefully I'll be able to showcase that deck as well. Next is Missy. It's 3. She is 3, a blue, black, and a red legendary creature, Time Lord Rogue. Notably not a Time Lord Doctor, so she cannot have a companion. She's a 4/5. Whenever another non-artifact creature dies, return to the battlefield face down, tapped, under your control. It's a 2/2 Cyberman artifact creature. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent faces a villainous choice. Each artifact creature you control deals 1 damage to that opponent, or you draw a card and chaos ensues. What chaos ensues means, that's with the plane chase cards. I do not have any of them with me. Oh, I lied. There we go. So when you're playing plane chase, you have a dice that has the planeswalker symbol and then that symbol right there. That is the chaos ensues symbol. So whatever ability is written down here, I'm not going to go through it. I'm leaving it up here long enough you could read it. Plane chase is a whole nother thing, so I'm not going to go into it. But it is cool that each of these decks did come with, I believe it's 5 or 10 plane chase cards, and they are based all around different themes within Doctor Who. They did a really good job with a lot of these. But you could make another deck if you're doing a plane chase thing also. That's one route to go. But that's just what the chaos ensues means. Anyhow, next is Death in Heaven. So it's 3 and a black for an enchantment saga. And these will get tokens on them when they enter the battlefield and then after your draw step. It seems like it should happen during your upkeep because it's an upkeep kind of thing, but it's not. It's after your draw step. Anyhow, on the first 2 chapters, so when it enters the battlefield and then at the beginning or after you draw your card the next turn, target player mills 2 cards, then exiles their graveyard. When you put on the third chapter, put all creature cards exiled with Death in Heaven into the battlefield face down under your control. They're 2/2 Cybermen artifact creatures. So again, just another way to get some more Cybermen. And I think that's kind of thematic how it has things go. Like, not all of them have them go to the graveyard, but there's an episode of Doctor Who where they, like, raise the dead and they're all Cybermen. So they're using, like, cadavers from people in the graveyard. Like, not the game graveyard, like the actual graveyard in the town they're in. And use them as Cybermen. So it's kind of cool how they kind of engineered that into the cards. They did a really good job with some of the flavor stuff in these decks. My next card is Brutaclad, the Telcor Engineer. He's 4 blue red For a legendary artifact creature Artificer, he is a 4/4. Creature tokens you control have haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 blue mirror artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. So you can make your Cybermen, you can make them all into mirrors. There's not too many things that... I didn't put a huge variety of tokens in here. You could, if you blew up your draw engine, make them all 10/10s that are all drowsy. That'd be kind of a fun little twist to put on somebody. I didn't even think about that till just right now. Yeah, I've got a bunch of 2/2s. Hey, Brutaclad. Oh, now they're 10/10s. Whoopsie. Go ahead and chump block them. Now you take 3 damage each. Actually, that would not work. Yeah, that would not work. Because he's for artifact creatures only. Sorry, I literally just thought of this and I messed it up. But, oh well, whatever. That would be kind of a neat way if you could turn them into artifacts somehow. The Eldrassis. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, it wouldn't work. Yeah, okay. Brutaclad doesn't care if they're artifact tokens, just as long as they're tokens. Yeah, there's still 10/10s going at somebody, you know? A couple of them got to get through. Next is the Mirror Battlesphere. It's 7 for a 4/7 artifact creature mirror construct. When it enters the battlefield, put 4 1/1 colorless artifact, or put 4 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature tokens into the battlefield. Whenever Mirror Battlesphere attacks, you may tap X untapped mirror you control. If you do, Mirror Battlesphere gets +X/+0 until the end of the turn and deals X damage to defending player. Yeah, you could do that with Brutaclad, though. You turn them all into mirrors, either 1/1s or 2/1s, and then tap this for, I don't know, a gazillion or whatever you're going to do, and do some hefty damage, plus now it's attacking. That'd be kind of fun. Okie dokie. So next is my sack outlets. The first one's kind of a limited. It's really limited, but I thought it was fun anyway. And that's Flamewarer, the Brash Veteran. It's a 1 and a black and a red for a legendary artifact creature robot. It has more than meets the eye. For a black and a red, you may cast this card converted, because it was just too much to say transformed. For black and a red, you may sacrifice another artifact, put +1/+1 counter on it, and convert it, activate only as a sorcery. Or you can also pay 1, discard your hand, put all exile cards you own with intel counters on them into your hand. This is a 3/2. Excuse me. So if you do play converted or it gets converted, this is the backside. It has living metal as long as it's your turn. This vehicle is also a creature. It has menace and death touch. Menace, again, just has to be blocked by 2 more creatures. Death touch, any amount of damage it deals to a creature is enough to kill it. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile that many cards from the top of your library face down, put intel counters on each of them, and then convert Flamewarer. That's how you get the intel counters on your cards. So, yeah, just an interesting little one shot every turn, sack a creature, get a +1/+1 on it. Excuse me. The others are not so limited, but I thought that was a fun one to put the tokens on and everything else. Plus, it's I don't know, you could call it a Cyberwoman. She's a Transformer. Anyway, so Viscera Seer, probably one of the better sack outlets. It's 1 for a Vampire Wizard. It's a 1/1, sacrifice a creature, scry 1. Scrying is just looking at the top X cards of your library, splitting them between the top, or you don't have to split them, but deciding which ones go on top, which ones go on bottom, and you get to pick the order. So, yeah, unlimited, unchained, no cost sack outlet here. Which will, I don't know if I mentioned that. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Ashod, the Lone Cyberman. So you could do this like 12 times to whatever creatures you have, or if borrowed from an opponent, and just boost the hell out of, or the heck, excuse me, boost the heck out of your commander. Next is Goblin Bombardment, probably one of my favorite sack outlets. It's 1 and a red for an enchantment. This one actually does stuff. Sacrifice a creature, Goblin Bombardment, deals 1 damage to target creature or player. I like this because if somebody decides to board wipe me, I'm pretty petty, honestly, but sometimes it's like, oh, you're going to board wipe me? You're taking all the damage then. Well, you could have split it up. I could have, but you didn't have to. It depends on the port state, really. Sometimes I'll split it up and kill other things or whatever. Anyhow, this one's a cool one. Probably one of the only white border cards I own anymore. It's Ashnod's Altar. It's 3 for an artifact. I think it just says sacrifice a creature is the cost now. I'm sure this has been errated. I don't know. Anyway, you sacrifice a creature and you add 2 colors mana to your mana pool. I believe the play this ability as an interrupt is gone as well. I think the newer card is way more streamlined than that. The point is, you can sacrifice cards or creatures as an instant and get mana for them. This one's a fun one. It's Demon Male Habrek. It's 4 for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +4/+2. Equip cost? Sack a creature. So you can just move that down the line, kill all your creatures off, make your commander huge. Yeah, fun stuff. This one does cost. It's Makeshift Munitions. It's 1 and a red for an enchantment. Pay 1, sacrifice an artifact or a creature. Makeshift Munitions deals 1 damage to any target. I like the any target part. This is not, strictly speaking, an artifact it's not a sack outlet, quote. But I had it lying around, and then originally I was going to build a deck around just abusing the living heck out of this card, but I decided not to, especially since I could get 2 of them with his causality. I could get 2 of them for the price of 1, which it's not that expensive in the first place. One of my favorite cards when I was growing up and started playing this first, it's the Phyrexian Dreadnought. It costs 1 for an artifact creature that is non-legendary, and it's a 12/12 that tramples. But I have to I can sacrifice any number of creatures with total power of 12 or more, or bury Phyrexian Dreadnought. I just thought it was cool that I could pay for 1, sack a bunch of tokens. Actually, I'd sacrifice half as many tokens. It's 6 tokens for the 12. Sack another token to get another one. And then if I have them lying around, sacrifice another 12 tokens or 6 tokens. And I have 2 Phyrexian Dreadnoughts on board. I just thought that was kind of a fun concept. It's like, it's not breaking it as bad as everybody else does, but it still breaks it. In any case, I thought it would just be a lot of fun to run that in there. That, and what's really crazy about that is, like, since the copy comes in as a token, if you have Brutaclad out, now you can turn all your stupid little token. Okay, maybe I did break this. Anyway, you can turn all your stupid little 1/1s and 2/2s and even your, well, not your Cybermen, but in any case, you can turn all your other tokens into 12/12s. Yeah, it just stupid crazy crap you could do with Magic cards. Alrighty. This next section is called That's What the Commander Does. In one way, shape, or form or another, these do what the Commander does. And another reason I put the Phyrexian Dreadnought in, because of some of the abilities on these cards. So the first one is the Autumn Soldier. It's 4 blue for an artifact creature alien soldier. It is a 0/0. But you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it isn't legendary. It's an artifact in addition to its other types, and it has Myriad. So I could do this to my commander. I could do this to my Phyrexian Dreadnought. Like, there's just so many awesome little things that you could do with this guy. I would probably copy my commander, especially for the different sacks that I will be doing. Next is the Sucketh Immortal Satoothith. I don't know, I can probably pronounce this like 12 different ways. It's 2 and a black for 2/2 artifact creature Necron. It has flash. Elite troops it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each creature that died this turn. So if I do have this thing where I've sacked just a ton of creatures to one thing or another, then plop him on the board at flash speed with an ungodly amount of +1/+1 counters on him. This guy's what gave me the idea of putting these kind of cards in the deck in the first place. I was literally just rummaging around my cards, and I found this guy. I was like, hey, he does the same thing as the commander does on the bottom. So it's Jury, the Master of the Review. It's a black and a red for a 1/1 human shaman. Whenever you sacrifice actually, he's a permanent. Yeah, Ashod's just another creature. So whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Jury, Master of the Review. When it dies, it does damage equal to its power to any target. I just thought this was awesome to put in this kind of deck that actually wants to sacrifice a lot of my creatures. And a lot of your creatures, too. Vashat Nadir. Oh, God. So, I've never been good at pronouncing. But anyway, there it is. It's 2 and a black for a 1/1. Alien Horror. Indestructible. Has Shadow, which is basically super flying. Or horsemanship. It has Morbid. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died that turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's the same ability but limited. And I'll take this one out of the sleeve. It's another one of those transform cards. It's a battle. It's Invasion of Asgol. It's red and a black for a battle siege. It has 4. I'm not sure what kind of. Sorry. As a siege enters, boy, they chopped that up. As a siege enters the battlefield, choose an opponent to protect it. You and others can attack it. When it's defeated, exile that cast it transformed. Cherokee transformed there. When Invasion of Asgol enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices creature or planeswalker and loses 1 life. So once they do the 4 damage to it, it becomes Ashen Reaper. It's a 2/1 with Menace. A lot of Menace in this deck. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on Ashen Reaper if a permanent was put to the graveyard from the battlefield this turn. So again, just kind of doing again what the commander sort of does. I mean, it's not the exact same thing, but the concept is there. Going to be sacrificing a lot of creatures, so put that back in the sleeve. Alrighty. And the next was just, this is the last section. This is just a bunch of kind of leftover stuff that didn't really fit anywhere. So the first one is the, hi. Do you want to say hi to everybody? Oh. Say hello. This is my kitty. She's just crawling up beside me. Her name is Melody. My mom named her. We kind of got her from my mom. She named her that because she thought that her voice sounded like music when she chirps, really. Anyway, can I do the rest of the video? Yeah? Alright. Oh. Get off the god. Alright, there you go. Sorry, she rubbed up against my leg and chirped and everything, so I got a little distracted. Anyway, so this next section is just cat hair. Just a bunch of cards that don't fit in any other section. Necron Overlord, it's 2 and a black for a 2/5 artifact creature, Necron Noble. It has Relentless March. You pay X, tap it. Tap X, untapped artifacts you control. Target opponent loses X life. Next is Cranial Plating. It's 2 for an artifact equipment. A quick creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. You pay 2 black to attach it to a target creature, and its regular equip cost is 1. One of the big keys with this is that this is great for creatures that go unblocked. You can pay the 2 black as more or less as an instant ability, because it's just an ability on the card. It's not as equip cost. His equip cost has to be paid at sorcery speed. Psychomancer, it's 1 and a black for a artifact creature Necron wizard. It's a 1/1. It has flying and Harbinger of Despair. Whenever Psychomancer or another non-token artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, or is put into exile from the battlefield, target opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Yes, we do produce a number of tokens in this deck, but a lot of the Cybermen will not count as tokens. So your creatures and the Cybermen that you get from other people will count for this. They are cards, they're just upside down. They are not tokens. Next is Awakened Amalgam. It's 4 for a star artifact creature golem. Awakened Amalgam's power and toughness are each equal to the number of differently named lands you control. I just wanted to honestly put this into a deck somewhere. I was going to put it into a Juggernaut deck, but it really didn't work well with the way the Juggernaut works. And I'm still a little confused on how the Juggernaut works. That's why I haven't shown the deck. But I thought this was a fun place because we're going to have a lot of we have, 18, 19, 20, 21 different named lands. So, yes, technically in the other deck I have like 37 differently named lands because I'm an idiot and I don't have wastes, but whatever. I think that's for that deck. I'm not going into that crap now. Last card is Lightning Greaves. I like at least a little bit of protection. I think there's enough in here that it's not warranted to protect my commander a lot, but if he does get up there, I do want to protect him. So if I've got a 15/15 that's doing this weird thing, giving me extra tokens, I want to protect him. So I did put Lightning Greaves in. It's 2 for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has haste and shroud, which means it can't be targeted by my stuff or my opponent's stuff, and the equip cost is 0. You still have to pay it and still have to do it at sorcery speed, but it's nothing. So there is that. Excuse me. That is the end of this deck. I did make a dialect deck that is a lot more tribal orientated. You'll see when I get it out there, hopefully. I know Exelon is coming out soon. I kind of want to get my Merfolk deck out there. We'll see how that goes. I know I've been saying that for what's it been, a month now? Anyway, I do apologize for I sound real nasally. Again, I'm getting over a cold. So, yeah. Hopefully we'll get the dialect deck out. Hopefully we'll get the Merfolk deck out before Exelon drops. I've kind of seen I paid a little bit of attention to another YouTube channel. It looks like that deck did things really differently. They kind of focused on the Explorer, which there's a little bit of that in my deck, but I did mine with Kumena, so it's a lot different. I kind of concentrate on the tapping, untapping aspect of everything. And Lords. Oh, Lord, I have Lords. Lord knows how many Lords I lorded into that Lord deck. In any case, we'll catch you next time. Hopefully, it'll be Dialects and the Merfolk. Have a good one. Keep a shuffling.